Hello, it's Hee-Jae here, and let's talk about the Bible. Okay, today I want to talk to you guys about presumptions. As somebody who is not trained in theology, I've had no training in theology. The only training that I had was religious studies, a little bit of Bible study with my dad, and probably for the most part is watching my dad as a child. He was a missionary in Papua New Guinea, so that was probably that interaction, and that for my whole life I was involved in church. I think that's like the only training, so-called training, that I have had in the Bible. Now, having said that, as a child growing up in a Christian community, in a Christian family, and all that, there's certain assumptions that I have made in my mind. And because of that assumptions, there are certain aspects when I read the Bible that hinders my understanding of the Bible until I start to really read the Bible and study it. There are these assumptions that I have made that make me gloss over the passages. For instance, one of the biggest assumptions that I have, or for the most part almost everybody has, is that the people who appear in this book are spiritually much more advanced, much more mature than I am. And their faith is so much stronger than mine. Now, there are some who really live up to that assumption that they are the pillars of faith. For instance, Daniel. I mean, there's nothing bad written about Daniel, and he is the role model. He is like the goody two shoes, the favorite child, the know-it-all, that kind of person. But for the most part, these people are normal like me. I mean, it's like the Bible took a sample out of normal people, and it's the story about how these normal people met God. Now, I say this because even in the story that we're examining, we assume that the person that is in the book, in the Bible, has a superior faith that Rebekah, left with that servant due to her superior faith. By faith, it appears in Hebrews chapter 11. By faith, Abram. By faith, Isaac. By faith, all the prophets. But when you look at those books, and I will go back to, one day I will be doing Hebrews chapter 11, because that chapter really, when I studied that chapter and really went into what these people have done, how these people have done, faith, I found out that faith is not just me spontaneously believing in God, but rather how God worked in a weak person. So that's a whole nother story, but in relation to that, even here, when I look into the details of Rebekah, I find something very interesting. Later on, when you come to chapter 31, verse 19, there's something that really caught my eye. It reads, when Laban, that's Rebekah's brother, had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel, that is Jacob's wife, stole her father's household gods. Stole her father's, Laban's, household gods. Now, if you think about it, if Laban was a God follower, he wouldn't have those gods. In the same way, you go back, and if you think about Rebekah, her brother has idols in his house. We would assume that Rebekah, their household as a whole, did not follow God. Instead, they had their own idols. And later on, if you go into Joshua chapter, I think it's chapter 24.
A few moments later.
Joshua chapter 24, verse 2. It says, Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your forefathers, including Terah, the father of Abram and Nahor, lived beyond the river and worshipped other gods." Meaning, this household did not worship God. The first person to actually follow God was Abram. And the rest of the household did not follow God. Abram was the chosen one. And the rest did not follow. In the same way, Rebekah did not follow God. She worshipped other idols. But somehow, without faith in God, she agrees to leave the very next day. And that is what makes this whole story even more intriguing, because you could kick that notion of by faith because of Rebekah's superior faith that she left with the servant. Because she believed in God, that she was promised by God. She trusted God to fulfill certain promises made to Abram, and then through Isaac, and then through her offspring. No, she went because of something we don't know yet. But I believe answer to her action is hidden. It's buried within the scripture of Genesis chapter 24. The two passages that repeats, hidden between the lines. This is how we do our Bible study. This is how we start to look between the lines, find that gem, tear down those presumptions that we have in our minds. So come along for the ride. Subscribe, leave a thumbs up, comment below, and share if you will. Thank you, and see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye.